Hello, everyone. I'm a little late to my own live today. Technical difficulties. I was having some email situation and tried restarting my computer and it took longer to boot back up than I thought it would. But I'm here and I'm excited to talk today. Specifically, we're going to talk today about building a great team. This is one of the biggest pain points that we see entrepreneurs that get into the mobile bar space have for a number of different reasons. Oftentimes, people who get into the mobile bar space are first time entrepreneurs. They might not come from management positions. We tend to see a lot of career switchers in the mobile bar space. So, people that are coming from other industries, not even industry adjacent. About 50% of the industry is from the hospitality industry. And then the other 50% are people who fall in love with the idea of the mobile bar space, either on Pinterest or Instagram, or just sitting on their porch drinking margaritas, wondering why we can't have margarita trucks like we have ice cream trucks. So there's a lot of passion involved in creating most mobile bar businesses, but it generally isn't a long history of managing people and building great teams. And so one of the biggest sticking points that we find for mobile bar owners is that when it comes time to scale or not be the sole bartender for their events, even if it's just them and their partner, them and their children, oftentimes their best friends, is like, what does it look like to build a great team? First, I want to talk a little bit about some of the downsides of working with friends and family when you're first starting your entrepreneurial venture, especially if you're not already a strong manager and a strong leader. Good morning, Claudia. Thanks for saying hi. Many of fights, many of fights that I've heard of from working with friends and family. They want to help and they want to support you, but they don't necessarily easily shift into the role of being led by a family member or a friend. And you, as the leader and manager, oftentimes feel really sticky about giving constructive criticism to friends and family, because you're like, they're helping me out. They're doing me a solid. I love them. I don't know how to have these really difficult, critical conversations. It's not a long-term solution. They're just pitching in and helping. So my advice is, unless you've worked with your family before, and you're willing to kind of have those sticky, critical conversations, they're willing to receive that information, that the very best place to start growing your company is not with friends and family. And I know that makes things difficult because the people that I've talked to in my coaching programs are often not sure where to find good staff. They're like, well, where would I even find somebody if and not my friends and family? And that's not to say friends and family can't work. It just is that more often than not, it tends to bring more drama than you're ready for, or that you really want to even work through. So my recommendation is to start building your bar roster as soon as possible, as early on in the process as you can. Don't wait until it's on fire and you're 4 weeks away from having multiple events in the same day and you need additional support. And the reason why is because when you do it that way, you oftentimes will bring people on that are warm bodies. They've bartended before, and so they can help. But it creates an environment of stress and not aligned. You're not aligned because you're not hiring for the right things. You're hiring the warm body because they're capable. They've done it before, but they might not be a fit. And so the very first place that I recommend starting when you're building a team is to really identify your mission, vision, and values. Your values being your most important piece of that. It's important to have a mission and a vision when you're hiring, especially nowadays. Once upon a time, I'm told, like, it was just people got paid really well for the work that they did. And so they're like, if you're paying me, I don't care what your vision is or your mission is, I'm here for you. That's not really the case any longer. People really want to know that who they're working for and the work that they're doing is in alignment with their own personal way in the world. So that's why values are so important when it comes to hiring. And a matter of fact, once you outline your values, which again, if you're in part of any of my programs, group or the academy, that's those are the hills that you'll die on. And so I recommend 3 to 5 values, and that should drive your hiring. 100% drive your hiring. So if timeliness is a value, that's going to be something you want to ask about in your interview. It's going to be something that you might want to check with references. Are they timely? You're going to want to actually have open dialogue and discussions with applicants saying, timeliness is one of the primary values of my mobile bar company. It is pertinent for your success here that you show up on time. But then you also have to be willing to manage according to your values. So if timeliness is a value of yours, and there's one bartender who's a really great bartender, but they consistently show up 15 minutes late, you have to be willing to die on that hill. It has to be a conversation you're willing to have with that person in that, hey, you were 15 minutes late. We can't do that again. If it happens again, you were 15 minutes late. That's a value of our company. So we need to come to terms. Why are we being late here? Is it because you don't want to arrive on time? You physically can't arrive on time? Like what are the reasons that are keeping you from being on time? And then if you use the 3 strikes model, which you don't have to do, but it's, as leaderships and managers, it's a good best practice. You got to let them go. If they may be the best bartender in the whole world, but if they are not consistently executing the values that you have said are the values of your company, you have to be willing to let them go. So outline your values first, 3 to 5 of them. I always joke, MVP has 8 values, and every hill we will die on. And we hire according to those values as well. Take some time, sit down. What are the things that are most important to you? For Bar Magnolia, hospitality was one of them. And what did that look like? When I would do interviews, I would look to see how I'd always do them in a public place. I'd look to see how they treated the barista, the people around them. At one time I was coming up the stairs, and my applicant was sitting in the chair, and his back was to the door, but the UPS woman was coming in ahead of me. And so he got up, went to the door, opened the door for the UPS lady to come through. That's living hospitality right there. And so I already knew that this person was in alignment with that value for us, because I saw it modeled. So identifying what your values are, very first step, because that's how you really get to root out the people that are not going to be good fits for your company. They may be great bartenders, but if they're not good fits for your company, they're not going to be good representatives for you at the event. Ideally, events you're not at, right? Because I'm a big believer of staying in the CEO spot where you're not executing all the events. Bartending is the biggest commodity position that we have in this industry. You can get a good bartender for $20 to $25 an hour. There's literally nothing that you could and should be doing as an entrepreneur that you can outsource for less than $20 to $25. So your time is best used when you're doing literally anything other than bartending. Now, when you're first getting started, you're like, I don't have the cash, the capital. Fine, do some. You gotta, do your thing, especially in the beginning. But your number one goal should be to not do bartending for events, because if you weren't bartending an event, which you guys know, between the packing, the prep, the execution, the cleanup, all of that, that's a full ass day. What could you do as the CEO of your company with a full ass day? Who could you meet? What networks and connections could you make? What could you do that's actually a revenue generating creation, right? Lots and lots of stuff. So bartenders, number one thing that you want to hire for values, not monetary value, like how they live their values. Hire for values. Have a screening process that is more than just what's your resume and having a phone interview. There should be a multi-step sequential interview process that really, think of it as like a funnel. All the people up here, resumes, maybe like whatever. And then what's that next step? My favorite way to do this with staff is to have an application process that has 1 to 3 questions that help me gauge decision making. And the reason being is that if we're sending bartenders on site and we're not there, then we need people who have entrepreneurial spirits, that have the ability to make decisions on the fly, that hold your values around what hospitality looks like, what's a yes, what's a no. I once had a bartender that was in the stage phase, and I'll get to that in a second. Um, but we're a no shots company. And I go to the bathroom, get more ice, whatever it was doing. I come back and like there's shots lined up on the bar. And I'm like, what is this? We talked about no shots. Oh, well, this is the bride and groom. I understand. I know it's hard to say no, but I need someone in this role that's okay and comfortable, adhering to the company rules, even when it's uncomfortable. And so my very first after the resume or with the resume is 1 to 3 questions that gauge decision making skills. Now, I want critical decision making skills. So, one of my favorite questions to ask is um, envision you are prepping for an event, and one of the cocktails on the menu is a mojito. What would you do prior to the event to set yourself up for success in order to ensure that you could handle the rush as soon as the ceremony's over? Now, whatever their answer is, it's really going to help me determine how their brain works. Have they really ever done volume bartending before? Because if you have, you already kind of know some of the cheats and some of the tips and tricks, right? For setting yourself up for a rush with a that is a more telling question to me than what your resume looks like. So ask a couple questions that ask them to think critically and make decisions, managerial. Then I invite people onto a phone interview. This is low risk for everybody. It's 15 to 30 minutes. It's a great opportunity for me to share with them who we are, what we do, how we serve, and then also to get a good sense for them. Hospitality was one of our values. And so if they have super casual, calling me like bro or whatever when we're on the phone and I'm potential employer, how are they going to treat people on site, right? Hospitality when I'm on those calls. I'm looking to make sure that they don't have super thick accents. Like I'm not opposed to accents, but when you guys know it's loud, it's busy, there's back and forth across the bar. You got to turn and burn right when it, especially at events. If they can't understand you and you might not be able to properly understand them, it creates a line. Right. So looking for a good fit from accent standpoint and also just general demeanor. You can tell a lot by having a just casual, honest, authentic conversation with someone. If I like that person at that point and I feel like they're in alignment with the values, I will bring them in for an in-person interview. This usually happened in my warehouse. I wanted to give them a look around. I wanted to show them the rig and also just kind of get a good sense of how they physically show up and places where they don't know anybody. So I'm like watching if they don't know anybody, because they're going to have to like show up to events all the time with people they don't know. Are they able to navigate how to find the place? All those things. If that goes well, we're not done yet. We do a stage. This is an old term. It came from the restaurant industry. I don't know if people still use it anymore, but essentially you work a shift that's like a shadow. And so I would put them as a bar back position. Either myself, my ops manager would be the lead on that event during the hiring season. And at the end of the shift, we have a real honest conversation about did they like working with Bar Magnolia and vice versa. Right. Like this is not a one way road. We want to make sure that both parties feel good about working with each other. Um, and after that, after you do that kind of like really arduous process of getting a good core number of people to work on the team, the very best way to find people is to ask them who they want to work with. Most bartenders have people in their sphere that they enjoy working with and that oftentimes have similar values. So once I built a very core group of bartenders, the best way to get more good, solid bartenders was to ask them who they, for the most part, those were the best hires. One, because you don't recommend people that you don't want to work with. And you don't want to look bad for recommending someone who it turns out to be a really shitty bartender. So those are my suggestions, just real quick, on how to ret- really nervous about building their team, that's a quick little sequence of events to make sure that you are getting the very best cream of the crop to work within your business. Whew. What questions do we have? Looks like we have a good solid number of people attending live. So this is the open Q&A portion, meaning you can ask about staffing, you can ask about building a team, or you can ask about anything bar related or business related, mobile event business related, any of that. Good. I'm glad you found that helpful. Did you pay them for the shadow shift? Absolutely. I pay everybody for their time. Now, they didn't get tip out. They would get a good, I think it was $25 an hour for the shadow shift. And the other thing about shadow shifts is that if they don't choose, if we choose that we're like not good fit, bad habits, bartenders have them, bad attitude, bartenders have them. If it's not a good fit, I just 1099 them. You only need to with you. As friends of our staff. Exactly that. If you find good people, they tend to surround themselves to other good people. Any other questions? If anyone has tips that they want to share with the community about what they do when they hire or things that they found to work really well. The other thing that I really like to do to get started, and I used to do this back when I was hiring restaurants too. But for my mobile bar, it was even better, is I would just go to my favorite restaurants and I would belly up to the bar. And if I interacted with a bartender that I really liked, make good drinks, had a good attitude, and like we are not a full-time thing. So if you're ever just looking to pick up additional shifts, we love to see about putting you on the roster. Send me your resume and like we can talk. And I thought that was a really good way as well, because the other thing about hiring bartenders that already have like other gigs or other jobs is that they're not expecting to work full time for you. And especially when you're first getting started, you can't give them full time shifts anyways. And so that's a nice way for them to fill in any gaps they have from their day job. What payroll software? I don't know if you can. My favorite one is Gusto. And the reason I like Gusto is because it makes it really hard for you to screw it up. I used to process payroll for over 350 employees, and it's a bit of a thing. But it was already set up when I did it. When I set up my own with Square, I didn't have one of the proper numbers. I didn't know I thought I had the proper number, but there's so many numbers when you start a business. And I didn't know I didn't have the right number. And Square didn't even tell me until they're like, hey, we can't follow your shit. And I'm like, what? Whereas Gusto is like, hey, you don't have the proper number here. If you can't or don't want to get it yourself, we'll get it for you. Now they charge for that, but you literally, they'll let you process payroll without the numbers, but they're just really good about saying like, hey, this is what you need to be in compliance. And I feel like a lot of mobile bar owners come from a place of like not knowing how to comply because the government does not make that easy. So any amount of support that. So you have to set up a payroll schedule, biweekly, weekly, whatever you want. But then you can run off-cycle payrolls as often as you want. So if you have events on Saturday, you can process it on Sunday and they can have it by Monday. You know what I mean? So I really like a lot of the things about Gusto, but it is a little bit more expensive than things like Squarespace. I think it might be double the cost even per month. But then you only pay per person when you run a payroll for them. So unlike ADP, which I'm pretty sure when I looked at it, it was like $100-something a month. And then you had to pay it all month, even if you weren't every month, plus the employee amount because it's like a per employee, even when you didn't really have any events. So I didn't love that. So Gusto is my favorite. I've tried a number of them. That one is my favorite, but it is a bit of an investment. Tara asks, what is the difference in pay rate that is typically used between that of a lead bartender versus a standard bartender? I personally paid managerial level role rates for lead bartenders. So, whatever it is that you would expect to make in a management role in your local area per hour is what I paid my lead bartenders. And I think it was like $35 or something an hour plus tips. I'm also a believer in throwing folks into the flames. I like to see how they handle the pressure. These are events where they are also bonus that day. Yeah, perfect. Yep, absolutely. Not sure if it's just me, but Facebook is super glitchy, freezing. Yeah, I don't know. That's silly. Like I have tech issues today. Is it Mercury retrograde? I feel like we had more time. Let's see. Did you receive health department and fire marshal approval for private events? So prove the venue. And I didn't have a venue. I didn't host anything at any of my properties. So, no. Awesome. Great questions. I don't know if anyone's interested, but I am going to be hopping over to Instagram and doing another live with another mobile bar owner in like 3 minutes. Hey, Keith from the UK. Thanks for joining. And we're going to talk about burnout. Another mobile bar owner, her name is Jessica Judson. She is, and her sister actually have created a program specifically to support entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs mainly, with burnout, which if you've been in the, listen, if you're a mobile bar owner, chances are you're coming into the industry with burnout and then perpetuating your burnout. So if you feel that, if that resonates with you, hop on over to the Instagram and we're going to do a quick little live to talk about her experience as a mobile bar owner, how burnout played into that, and then a little bit about her program, which is supposed to help support those struggling with that. Yay. Thanks for coming to the live, y'all. Marquetta, did you get an inspection to start running your mobile bar from fire department? And no, it is not required in Tennessee for mobile bartenders to have anything inspected by the fire or health department in order to bartend. My mobile bar itself, the camper, did qualify for a food truck permit, which does require running it past the health department and the water department here in Nashville. Soccer Sarah, that's it. That's my nickname forever. But yeah, you shouldn't to mobile bartend unless you're on your property. You shouldn't have to get a fire and health. Now, if you want to do public events, and your first question was about private events. If you want to do public events, then yes, you need a health department like permit. I don't know, words are hard today, but you need the health department to sign off on your kind of little setup. You'd have a hand washing station and like that sort of thing. Don't know about fire, at least in Nashville, that was never a thing, mainly because we're bartenders. Like, where would the flames come? Like, if I was a food truck and working with like propane or something, then that would make sense. Yeah, you're in the DMV. I worked in the DMV for 8 years. The challenge there is that you need Maryland, DC, and Virginia, depending on where you are. But if you don't have a brick and mortar, it still shouldn't apply. Temporary of yearly health department permit for public events. Thank you. Yes, much better put than the way I described it. Awesome. Well, if you guys enjoyed this, we actually have an entire module on staffing and hiring in the Mobile Bar Academy. So if you're not in there, hop on over there. And we'll do this again next week on a slightly different topic. If you're looking for more, hop over to Instagram and Jessica and I will be talking about entrepreneurship and burnout. This was so much fun. Thank you so much. We'll see you again next week.